Do you want to learn Google Tag Manager? Perhaps you've been outsourcing Google Tag Manager to someone else and you want to learn more about what they're doing, or you want to bring some of those tasks in, or maybe you've just created a new website and you want to build up tracking yourself, or you're new and you want to learn more. Well, you've come to the right place. In this video, I'm going to show you all the steps that I usually take when I build up a tracking setup on a new domain. So you'll learn how to set up Google Analytics, you'll learn how to set up Google Ads, Meta Ads, and I'm going to show you how you can do it in such a way that it is all privacy compliant. Let's dive in. Hey and welcome to the channel. My name is Leon. This channel exists to help you use web analytics to become more effective in your daily work. I want to thank everyone that has been liking my videos and has subscribed to the channel recently, because that really helps me get these videos out to as many people as I can. And as a way to say thank you, I've created a short cheat sheet on how you can grow your website traffic. So if you're interested in that, check out the video description for a free download link there. Also, if you like this video and want to watch more, just head over to my channel link. You'll find all sorts of videos over there on how to set up Google Analytics and how to set up Google Tag Manager. Alright, let me start out by showing you how Google Tag Manager is organized. And I will show you how to open up an account in a second. But if you log into an existing account, this is what you should see. You should see an account right here. And the best practice is to have one account for every organization. So in my case, for my business, I have created an account with my name on it. And within that account, you have one or more containers. Usually a container represents a website that you own. So if you have 5 sites, usually you make 5 different containers for each site. And of course, there are exceptions to this rule, but if you're starting out, this is what I would go for. If you don't have an account yet, you can make one by going into tagmanager.google.com. And if you're not logged in yet, you should log in with your Gmail or Google account. So in my case, this is a Gmail address that doesn't have Tag Manager yet. So let me log in to show you what happens. So once you log into your Google account, you see a message that says click here to make an account. And of course, this is Dutch, but you will be forwarded to a form where you can open up an account. So you should name this after your organization, set it to the right country, and then start your first container. And my naming convention here is to name this after the site that I'm going to tag. So in the case of my own website, I name this after the domain name, and then I use this internet container. So you can even make Tag Manager for your mobile apps or for a server-side container. I have videos on that as well, but if you're just starting out, you're most likely going to use this internet version of Google Tag Manager, and then you can press make. So I'm not going to do that because I already have an account. I'm going to open up a new container within the existing account. So if you have a new site, but you already have Tag Manager, this is what I recommend to keep it organized in a single account. Within my account, I'm going to say create a new container. And because this is a testing one, I'm going to say this is 27th of January where I'm filming this. And I'm going to make a web container. And here I can create a new container. And the first thing that I see after making a new container is the tracking code that you should add to your site. And I'm going to show you how you can add this to your site. But if you accidentally click away, you will find the same message by clicking on your GTM ID right here. So that's the message that you should have. So this is the window that you need in order to install Google Tag Manager on your site. And I'm going to show you how to do that in the next section. So to install Google Tag Manager on your site, you should log in to your website backend. I'm currently using WordPress, but I'm going to show you a method that works with every site out there. So in order to get Google Tag Manager to work on your site, you should add this tracking code to your site. And again, you can find this tracking code by clicking on the Google Tag Manager ID in the top corner. And you can just copy this and this one, and you can copy this instruction. If you do have a web developer that you work with, you can just send them this code and ask them to implement it. It's good to just copy the whole thing, so they also have the accompanying instructions. But if you want to do it yourself, usually there is some kind of text box in your admin where you can add scripts to your site. And in my case, I installed a plugin for this, and I can go under settings, head and footer. The plugin is called head, footer and post injections. It's just a plugin that I really like. It gives me a text box for the head page section of every site and the body section. And I can just copy the first one into the first text box and the second into the second text box, and I can save, and this will make sure that these scripts are added to each site. Well, there are other plugins for this as well. It might be that you are on a completely different CMS, but the way of inserting is very common, and this is the most easy one. Of course, if you add scripts, you usually should empty your cache as well. So usually a website has a caching layer, which means that every time a user visits your site, the entire web page is not generated all over again, but there's a temporary version of that page stored somewhere. So it's just to speed things up a little bit. If you change something on your site, you should always empty your site cache. And for me, this is done under cache and then purge all caches, and this is how I know for sure that my latest additions are inserted on my site. I can log out now and go back to my site to check if my Google Tag Manager script is added. So let's do that. So I'm here on my home page. I'm going to right click and I'm going to say inspect the page source. I'm going to just look for the GTM identifier right here. So I'm going to copy this right here, and in my page source I'm going to look for this, and I see that my script is added, and it's usually scrambled a little bit through the compression of the pages that I'm using, but I see that the script is inserted, and this gives me some confidence that Google Tag Manager is working. All right, the second way that you can have confidence that Tag Manager is actually working on your site is by using preview mode. And before we can go into preview mode, I recommend that you install this extension. I will link it in the video description, but this extension should be installed and should be running in the background. So I have it installed right here. I don't have it pinned because I kind of never have to access it, so I don't pin it, but it's just there running in the background, helping the testing procedure to work, helping the preview mode to work. Once you've installed that, you can go back into your Google Tag Manager container and you can hit preview. And let me just pull out this window. So here I have Google Tag Manager. Once you hit preview, we're gonna open a second tab. And if you do this for the first time, it will be empty right here, but you just fill out your website domain here, and then you press connect. And once you do that, a third window will pop up with your website. And if everything is working correctly, you should have Tag Assistant connected right here. And that's the second way you can verify that Google Tag Manager is installed correctly on your site. So before we proceed, there's one thing that you should know about Google Tag Manager, and that is that we can make changes here, and those changes are not on our site immediately. For instance, if I add a tag here, that tag is not on my site immediately. The things that I add here, or the things that I delete here, or the things that I change, those changes are only added to my site once I hit the submit button in the top right corner. And that means that we can take our time. We can try out things, we can test things, and only once we've verified that things are working, we can press this submit button. I will show you at the end how the testing procedure works, but for now I wanted to point out that the things that we do here are not affecting your site immediately. So you don't have to worry about that. So the first tag that we're gonna add is a cookie banner tag. And depending on where you live, this might or might not be necessary. But in many cases, you need to ask for permission, you need to ask for consent in order to start tracking your users. So that's why I'm gonna start with a cookie banner. The cookie banner that I like to work with is Cookiebot. I've been using that for years, but as of lately, I'm also an affiliate. So if you want to support the channel and if you want to open up an account, you can do that by going into the video description where I will put an affiliate link to Cookiebot. So to add a tag to our sites, you need to go into tags. In my case, this is empty, and you need to press new. And adding a tag, you need to do three things. You need to give it a name, you need to configure your tag, and you need to configure your trigger. Let's go over these three things. And we're gonna add a bunch of tags in this tutorial. And by the end, I'm confident that you will at least in broad terms know what Tag Manager is about. And let's first start with the name. The name doesn't have any function except for keeping your container organized. And because the list of tags is sorted alphabetically, I like to start this with a number. And I give the cookie banner usually a high number because even though it's important, I don't need to change that often. So it's fine if it's low on the list. And I'm gonna add it here, cookie banner, and because this is Cookiebot, I'm gonna say that here in the name. So this is the name, and again, this doesn't do anything except for keeping things a little bit organized in your tag list. Then the two things that do really matter are the tag configuration and the trigger. Then the tag configuration basically means like what kind of script, what kind of tag are we adding to our site. And once you open that, you see an entire list of things that you can add to your site. And many things are not on the list here. For instance, Cookiebot is not on the list, but there is a community template gallery that has even more templates. So let me open that up and let's look for Cookiebot. So here I'm gonna look for Cookiebot, and this is the official tag template that we're gonna use. I'm gonna add this to my workspace. I need to be okay with a couple of things here. So I'm gonna say add. And once I've done that, I see that the tag configuration box has changed. And I see that I'm currently adding Cookiebot to my site. And below that, we will see a couple of configuration fields. And this flow is very common once you start adding more tags. Cookiebot ID, we need to copy that from our settings. I've already logged into my Cookiebot account. Under settings, I have a section called scripts. And by the way, Cookiebot has two different logins depending on when you added your account, when you opened up your account. So it might be that your login looks a little bit different. I don't know why they did that, but if yours looks different, you should look somewhere in your settings. And there is a domain group ID that looks like this, and you can just copy that from here into your template tag. So here, this is the Cookiebot ID. I'm just gonna paste it in here. As a language, I'm gonna keep it to the default. Auto detect, I want the CDN region to be EU. And I want to keep enable Google Consent Mode. I want to keep that enabled. I'm gonna say enable URL pass-through, advertiser consent mode, and I'm gonna keep this to the default. So these are the settings that I'm using for Cookiebot. And this is the first part of my tag is done. The tag configuration is done. And this is, again, where we choose like what are we gonna put on our site, and we need to configure that. So in this case, we're gonna add Cookiebot to our site, and I've configured it as such. So under trigger, which is the second part of our configuration, is like when do we want to add this to our site? When in the flow of our site? Do we want it on all pages, or do we want it on some pages? Do we want to add it like first when you open up the page, or do you want it somewhere down the line when somebody clicks somewhere, or when a form is submitted, or when a scroll happens? So triggering basically controls like when is this thing that we just configured, when do we want to add it to our site? Well, under triggering, in this case, I want to add the cookie banner to my site on all pages. And when you start out, there are a couple of options here, but there is a very specific one that is meant for cookie banners, and that is consent initialization. This means that this is the first thing to load on our site. And we want that because we want to detect, like, is there consent already given on a previous page? And then you can load other tags. So consent initialization is very important with your cookie banner to use this one, and on all pages, yes. And then I'm gonna hit save. And this is the first thing that I want to add to my site in order to keep it compliant. Because we are talking about privacy and a cookie banner, there's one more thing that I want to do here. Under admin and then container settings, there is a consent overview box that you should tick. So tick this box and then hit save, and then go back to your workspace and then to tags. And then you should have this shield icon. And we're gonna use this icon in order to manage like what tags are placed after consent or before consent. Because again, we need to ask for permission, and some tags, we can only fire those tags after consent has been given, and we can manage that right here. I will show that later. We're still preparing and setting up our container. All right, now comes the fun part. We've already added the cookie banner. I now want to add my Google Analytics configuration. And we're gonna do this very quick. This is a beginner's tutorial, so I'm gonna cover the basics only. But let's add Google Analytics to our site. And the procedure of adding Google Analytics is kind of the same. So let's go under tags and let's hit new tag. And again, there are three things to configure here. First is the name, second is the tag, and third, there's the trigger. The name doesn't do anything except for just organizing your tags. Again, your tag list is sorted alphabetically. So I like to number my tags. So the most important one is at the top and the least important one is at the bottom. For me, Google Analytics is very important. So I want to keep my Google Analytics configuration at the top. And because of that, I'm just starting out here with 0101, which means it will start out at the top, and every Google Analytics tag will get this number, but then the next tag that we're going to add for our conversions, etc., will get a new number. And we're going to start out by adding the base tag, the config tag, and I'm going to call this GA4 config, and then I like to add the domain name behind this. But again, this is just the name. It doesn't do anything except for just keeping things a little bit organized. Then under tag configuration and under triggering, those are the things that really make up like, does the tag work or not? Under tag configuration, we're going to choose like what are we going to put on our site right here? And of course, we're going to add Google Analytics. And under Google Analytics, there are a couple of options, but we need to start out with a Google tag because the entire configuration depends on this tag. So we need to add this tag first, and then after that, we can start adding other tags. So we're going to add a Google tag. And once you choose that, you have the option of configuring that tag. And there is a box here that says tag ID. Well, I have my Google Analytics property open right here. You can find that tag ID under admin, and then under admin you have an option called data streams. If you open up your data stream, you will find your tag, your measurement ID right here. So I'm going to press this button to copy it. I'm going to go back into Google Tag Manager, and I could just paste it in here and that will work fine. However, I like to do one extra step. You can press this Duplo icon and we can store that ID somewhere where we can reference it later. And that is just one extra step that will save us a little bit of time down the line. So let me show you what I mean. So under this Duplo icon, you can make a new variable that I'm going to call GA4 measurement ID. And under variable configuration, this might look very complicated because there are just a lot of options here, but we're going to choose a very simple one. We're going to choose the constant variable type. That will just give us a small text box. And every time we reference this variable, it will return our measurement ID. And that's just, again, a small extra step that will save us a little bit of time down the line. So again, here you see this name here in brackets, and that means that it just references that variable and it returns the right Google Analytics 4 measurement ID. This is everything that we need right now. Under triggering, somehow it already chose the trigger for me. I'm not used to that. If that box is empty, under triggering, you can go ahead and choose the initialization all pages trigger. Again, we want Google Analytics to be on every page. Well, there are 3 different flavors. The constant initialization is reserved for your cookie banner, so you don't use it for anything else but your cookie banner. And then initialization all pages is meant for things like this. So the configuration tag from Google Analytics, because this needs to fire first before something else fires. So again, we're going to use that. And this way we put Google Analytics, the base tag, on our site. So I'm going to hit save. And we see that we now have 2 tags, the cookie banner and the GA4 config tag that I need. All right, so we've set up our first GA4 tag, our first Google Analytics tag, and this tracks all the pages of our site. This tag will provide us with a wealth of information. It will provide us with how many users do we have on our site, how much time do they spend on our site. But very often we want to track a little bit more extra. We want to track the conversions that are happening on our site. So in my case, that is how many people are filling out my contact form. So I want to show you how to set this up in Google Tag Manager. But before we do that, I want to give you a short warning, because you can set this up in Google Tag Manager. You can also set this up from within Google Analytics. So you can do this both ways. You don't want to do this both at the same time. So if you've already set up conversions in Google Analytics 4, you don't need to add them here, or else you start double counting your tags. So personally, I prefer to manage the whole setup from within Google Tag Manager. So that's my preferred way of working, but there's no right or wrong here. It's just a matter of personal preference. But today I want to show you how to set this up from within Google Tag Manager. And we can do that by first going into our site and doing some research, because once you start filling out your site, you want to know, like, is there a thank you page behind this form? So I'm gonna just fill out my contact form, and it's just taking a little bit of time. Oh, my domain, this didn't verify. So let's fill out this form. And once I fill out my form, I'm redirected to a new page. Let me just show you what happens in a small text file. So my contact form right here is on this page. And my thank you page is on a unique URL with this page path. And sometimes you even have like parameters behind your thank you page. And what I like to do is I like to copy this part. So I'm going to remove all parameters in case there are any. I'm going to remove the domain name, and what I'm left with is the page path. This is the piece that I'll need in the next phase. So once we have that, let's go back into Google Tag Manager and let's add an event to measure a conversion. So I'm going to press new. I'm going to say 01 because we're still under Google Analytics. I'm going to say 02 GA4 event. I'm going to say contact form submit. And I like to write the name of my event in my title, so I know from the list, like what am I tracking here. And I use contact form submit. I use this way of writing because all GA4 events use this lowercase with underscore characters. This is called snake case. It's just a notation for GA4 events. And again, the name doesn't do anything other than just keeping this whole thing organized. Again, the whole procedure is the same as before. We need to configure a tag and a trigger. So under tag configuration, we're still sending data to Google Analytics. So I'm going to choose Google Analytics. This time, I'm going to track a GA4 event. And on a GA4 event, we need to do a little bit of configuration here. So first, measurement ID. Again, you could just go back into Google Analytics and find your measurement ID here, but I don't want to do that. I want to go into the Duplo icon and find the measurement ID here. And this is because we stored our measurement ID previously in a variable. This way we can save ourselves a little bit of time here. And under event name, I'm gonna paste in the name that I chose for this conversion. And again, it's important to choose a clear name here. So I'm tracking my contact form, but if you have a newsletter form or some kind of lead form, just pick a name that's very clear because these are the names that show up in your reports. The name that I choose, I'm gonna put it in my text file as well because I'm gonna need that later. And this is all for now. So my tag configuration says we're gonna send data to Google Analytics, to this measurement ID, to this event name. And this is the event name that we want to see in our reports. Then under triggering, we need to configure, okay, when is this data being sent? When am I gonna fire this tag? So under triggering, in a new container, you have 3 options. And these 3 are all not sufficient for what we want to do because we don't want to track this conversion on every page. We want to track this conversion on a very specific page when somebody opens up my thank you page. So I'm gonna make a new trigger here. I like to name this form and then dash contact form because the trigger list is also sorted alphabetically. So I would like to prefix my triggers, like every form trigger is sorted, has its own group. And that makes it really easy to see, okay, is that form, does it already have a trigger, yes or no? So in this case, this is the name that I choose, contact form. And then under trigger configuration, we want to track this when a page opens. So a page view and then some page views. And I'm going to say when page path contains contact bedankt. So this is the condition. So not on all page views. That's not what we want. We want our tag to fire on a very specific page. And this is the condition. So when the page path contains and then contact bedankt. So let's hit save. So again, 3 things have we added. This is the name. This is the tag that we configured. We're sending data to Google Analytics. This is the event that we're sending. And the moment that we fire this tag is when the thank you page of the contact form is being opened. So let's hit save. So to summarize, we have added 2 Google Analytics tags. We have added a base tag that tracks every page. And we've added a conversion tag that tracks whenever somebody has sent a contact form, has visited the thank you page. All right, so the power of Google Tag Manager is of course that we can not only send data to Google Analytics, but we can send the same data to other platforms as well. So that's why I want to show you how to set up this basic configuration on other platforms like Google Ads and Meta Ads. Let me first show you how to set up Google Ads. And within Google Ads, there are basically 3 tags that we want to do. The first tag that we want to add is a conversion linker tag. That is best practice for when you are using Google Ads. I'm gonna leave a link in the video description if you are interested in reading more about why exactly you need that tag. The second tag that we're gonna add is a remarketing tag. That is basically a tag that you add to every page of your site. And every time a user that has consented opens up a page, you add that user to a remarketing audience and you can target those users with new ads in the future. And thirdly, we want to track conversions. So I want to show you how to set up these 3 tags. Let's start out by adding the conversion linker. So I'm going to make a new tag. And because we are moving from Google Analytics now into a new platform, Google Ads, I want to start out by O2 because this is like a new group. And this is the first tag within Google Ads. I'm going to name this Google Ads and I'm going to say conversion linker. So under tag configuration, we're not going to use Google Analytics tags anymore, but we're now moving into Google Ads. So I'm going to open up Google Ads and I'm going to choose the conversion linker. If you don't add this, you will get a warning later on, so we might as well just start here. The conversion linker doesn't need any configuration, and under triggering, we can just add this to all pages. So this is an easy one. Let's hit save. The next tag that I want to load here, the second Google Ads tag, is a remarketing tag. And in the tag configuration, we can choose Google Ads, and then there's a remarketing tag right here. So I'm going to choose that. And once I've chosen that, we see that Google Ads remarketing is chosen as a tag type. And below that, there is a conversion ID needed. This is the only piece that you really need in order to get this working. And we can copy this from our Google Ads account. So in your Google Ads account, just head into Tools and then go into Shared Library, Audience Manager, and then to your data sources. And here under data sources, there are multiple options, but I like to use this Google Ads tag. We can go into details here. And if you scroll to the bottom here, there is a section called tag setup. And if you choose use Google Tag Manager, there is a conversion ID that you can copy right here. So I'm going to copy it, going back into Google Tag Manager. And maybe you remember from our Google Analytics setup that I like to put things in variables. I'm going to do the same thing here. So I'm going to press the Duplo icon here. I'm going to say new variable. I'm going to say Google Ads conversion ID. And the variable configuration, I'm going to put this in a constant variable. And I can paste the value right here. So every time I reference this variable, it's going to return this value, and that will save me just a little bit of time in the future. I might as well just paste it in here, but this is easier once I start adding more Google Ads tags. So I don't need to do any other configuration right here, so I'm going to leave it as it is. And under triggering, I want this to fire on all pages of my site. In the later section of my video, I'm going to show you how to make sure that this doesn't load if consent has not been given. But for now, I'm going to leave it like this. I'm going to hit save. And this is the remarketing tag. So we already have two tags, the conversion linker and the remarketing tag. And thirdly, I want to show you how to send conversion data to Google Ads as well. So I'm going to make a third tag. I'm going to call this 0203 because we're still in Google Ads. But it's the third tag, and this is my contact form. So under tag configuration, we're going to add a Google Ads tag, but this time I don't want to load the conversion linker. I don't want to load a remarketing tag, but I want to track a conversion. So I'm going to choose this one. And once you've chosen this, you have a couple of things that you need to fill out. The first two are really needed. So in this case, we have already found our conversion ID, and this is the same one. So I can just open up my variable list here and add the Google Ads conversion ID. Conversion label, this one is unique for every conversion. So I need to go into my account under goals. If you don't have a goals set up already, you just can go in here and create a conversion action and just go through the entire process there. Or if you already have set up a goal, you can just open it up, scroll to the bottom and go into tag setup here. And in the tag setup, there's a use Google Tag Manager section where you're going to find your conversion ID. We already have that, but this one is the one that's unique for every conversion. I'm going to copy this and I'm going to paste this in my conversion label. You can even send a value. So if that every contact form, if that's worth 100 euros for me, I would set it up like this. Some people do that. I don't. So I'm going to remove it. This is how you set up a Google Ads conversion tag. Under triggering, this is where we configure like, okay, when do we want this to fire? We don't want this to fire on all pages, but we have already created a trigger that fires on the contact form thank you page, which is this one. And because we've already set that up when we installed Google Analytics, we can reuse that when we have other platforms. So in this case, I want this conversion tag to load on exactly the same thank you page right here. So I'm going to reuse this trigger for my Google Ads conversion. And now I can press save. So the last platform that I want to show you is how to set up meta ads. So I'm going to show you that as well here. The process is exactly the same. So I hope you start to recognize a certain pattern here, but we need to go into new. And again, we need to fill out a name, a tag configuration, and we need to choose a trigger. Under name, because this is a new platform, I'm going to give this a new number. This is 03, and then this is the first tag within meta ads. So I'm going to call this meta ads. Again, within meta ads, there are two tag types. There's a tag that you want to add on every page, and then there's a tag that you want to add for specific events or conversions that you want to track. So I'm going to keep this simple. The first that I want to track is the page view event. This is basically the pixel that you add to every site. And on the tag configuration, there is no tag type for Facebook ads or meta ads by default. So we need to go into the template gallery. We need to look for Facebook. So I'm going to press this icon right here. I'm going to look for Facebook. And there's the Facebook pixel template tag by Facebook Archive. This is the one that I like to use. So I'm going to add this to my workspace. I'm going to press add. And once I've done that, I see that I've chosen the Facebook pixel tag type. So that's what I'm going to fire on my site. And under that, we need to do some configuration. And the first one is the Facebook pixel ID. So I'm going to open up my Facebook Events Manager. I've already opened it up right here, so I don't need to look. Under settings, there is a Facebook pixel ID or dataset ID. So that's the ID that we need right here. So I'm going to go back into Google Tag Manager. And again, you could just paste it in here, but I like to organize things in variables to save me a little bit of time in the future. So I'm going to press this Duplo icon, this variable icon. I'm going to make a variable that's called meta ads pixel ID. Under variable configuration, again, I'm just going to use the constant variable. I'm going to paste in the value right here. So every time I reference this variable, it's going to return the right pixel ID for me. So I'm going to hit save. So meta ads pixel ID. And underneath, we could do some other configuration here. But right now, the page view is all I want to track. So I'm going to keep it just like this. Under triggering, I'm going to choose the initialization all pages trigger just like GA4 because I want this to load first. And once I've done that, I'm going to hit save. The second tag that I want to add, I want to track a conversion. So every time somebody enters my contact form and submits that, I want to track that conversion into meta ads. So I'm going to make a new tag here. It's 0302 meta ads. And I'm going to call this contact. So under tag configuration, because we've already added our Facebook pixel template, we can choose it now under custom. So I'm going to add that again. As Facebook pixel ID, I'm going to choose the meta ads pixel ID variable that I've just created. And under event name, I'm going to open up this list. I'm going to look for an event name that closely matches what I want to track. So in this case, I'm tracking a contact form, so contact would suit very well. If you don't see anything in your list that you like here, you can even come up with your own name, but usually contact or lead or purchase or subscribe. There are a lot of names here by default that you can use. So in this case, contact. There is more configuration that you could do here, but we're going to keep this simple. I want to track a contact event into Facebook, and I'm going to do that when somebody submits my contact form. And again, we've already created a trigger for that when we've set up Google Analytics, and I'm going to reuse the same trigger right here. And now I'm going to hit save. All right, we've covered a lot of ground, but we are not done yet. There are two essential steps that we need to take before we can hit submit and push these changes to our website. First of all, I want to show you how to make sure that this is all compliant. And here in the top right corner, there is a shield icon that you can press. And once you press that, you open up the consent overview. And in the consent overview, you kind of manage like what tags are fired before consent and after consent, and what consent type is needed in order for this tag to fire. And then there's a box here that says consent not configured. So these are all the tags that we need to look at. And then once we have configured all these tags, they end up in the second box where it says consent configured. For these tags, we can do this individually. So we can open up the tag and then set the consent settings here. But what I like to do here is I like to, for instance, tick all the Google Analytics events and then manage the consent for all those events together. So you can tick the boxes for the tags that you want to configure, and then you can say, I want to edit the consent settings. And there are basically three options. You can say no additional consent required. So that means that it's not going to do extra checks for you. Or you can say, I want to require additional consent. And then you can add a specific check that you want to add. So if you want to say, okay, these tags can only run if like marketing consent has been given, you choose add storage here. So until add storage has been given, those tags will not fire. You can do the same for analytics storage. So you can say, I want to add a check analytics storage, and then that tag will only fire once analytics storage has actually been given. So let me go back one step right here, because there's one thing that I want to show you. Some tags, and that means in many cases Google tags, have built-in consent checks. So Google Analytics, Google Ads, they have built-in consent checks, and also the cookie banner has built-in consent checks. And that means that the tag itself will look like, is consent already given, yes or no, and will adjust its behavior based on that. So if a tag has built-in consent checks, in many cases you do not need to add extra checks. So in these cases, for all these tags, because they have built-in consent checks, I'm going to say no additional consent required, because again, those tags determine themselves, like, can I track yes or no? Then I have my meta ads, so I'm going to manage these all together. I'm going to say require additional consent for this tag to fire. I'm going to choose add storage, and that means that add storage is required before that tag can fire. I'm going to hit save. Right now I have my consent configured for every single tag, and that means that I don't have any tags under consent not configured, but all my tags are currently set to consent configured. All right, we've come a long way. We've covered a lot of ground. We've built essentially an entire basic setup in a few minutes, and we've made it privacy compliant. It's important to know that the changes that we've made are not live yet. The people that visit my site are not currently being tracked because all these changes are currently pending. And I see that right here through workspace changes. And I also see that through the overview where I have a whole bunch of workspace changes pending. And those changes are not live for our website visitors until I press the submit button. But I don't want to do that yet. I want to test if things are working. So let me show you how you can test if your setup is currently working. So I have my tag manager open. I'm going to hit preview and you'll find that there's a second window that's being opened right here, Google Tag Assistant. And if your website URL is not filled out here, you can do that just by pasting it in here and then pressing connect. And that will open a third window. And that window has a message that says Tag Assistant connected. And if everything works, you will see a green check right here. And this session is very special. I already explained that the changes that we've made are not live yet. But in this session, in this third window, the Tag Assistant is connected. It is as if these changes are already live, but then only in your session, only in this window. So again, your site visitors don't have all these changes live yet, but in this window, it pretends, it behaves like those changes are live already, so you can test if things are working. And then in the Tag Assistant, you have a summary that says like which tags are fired already and which tags are not fired already. And some tags are just not fired because of consent that is not given yet. So meta ads page view is not fired because of consent, but we haven't submitted our contact form yet, so you don't see those tags fired already. And the J4 and Google Ads tags, these tags have consent checks built in. So we fire them, but then they adjust their behavior automatically. So they won't track anything if consent has not been given yet. So let me say allow everything. And let's just click a bunch of pages. What we will find right now is that Meta Ads has fired, Google Ads, all these tags have fired a bunch of times because we've opened up multiple page views. And also Meta Ads has now fired because consent has been given. And after that, it will start firing on every page. There are a bunch of tags that didn't fire yet. And that is because we haven't submitted our contact form. So that works as expected. Let me go back to the connected window. Let's open up the contact form. And I need to check every time if the Tag Assistant is still connected, because sometimes I lose my connection and then I start wondering why my setup is not working. So check if your Tag Assistant is still connected. And then I'm going to fill out my contact form once more and I'm going to hit send. That will redirect me to a thank you page. Yeah, there you go. And if I open up my Tag Assistant now, I see that all tags have fired. By the way, I see that Facebook Pixel has failed a couple of times. And I know why that is. That is because I have an ad blocker enabled. So if you wanted to really test if things are working, just hit pause on your ad blocker. Also, if you want to check if Meta Ads is really working, you can install the Meta Ads Pixel Helper. I will link that extension also in the video description. So let me just disable my ad blocker. So that will reload my page. And let's see what happens. So now in the Meta Ads Pixel Helper extension, I see that it has detected a page view event and a contact event. So that is working. And also in the Tag Assistant, I now see that Meta Ads, let me see, fired one time, failed 4 times. So it has now started working. So once you're done building your setup, testing your setup, making sure it's privacy compliant, you're ready to hit submit. So let's submit this. It's a version 1 for me. I set up J4, Google Ads, Meta Ads, and then I'm gonna hit publish. And once I do that, the changes that we've made are now live, are now published. And every time a user visits my site, it will be tracked. It will see the cookie banner. It will be tracked in Google Analytics, Google Ads, and Meta Ads. Publishing a new version will also make sure that under versions, you have a new version. So if you ever want to go back because you broke something, it's real easy. Just say publish to the previous version. And this gives me a lot of confidence as well. So no matter what I mess up, I can always revert and go back into a previous version. All right, that's it for today. I hope this video was clear. I hope it was helpful. And I hope you learned how Google Tag Manager works. Of course, the setup is not perfect by all means. So if you want to learn more about how to work with Google Tag Manager, I recommend that you watch my other videos as well. If you're interested in an entire online course, please let me know, because I'm sometimes considering making an entire course on this, but it takes a lot of time to make an online course. And I kind of only want to do that if people are really interested in that. So let me know in the comments again if you're interested in that. And I want to thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.